So BOA was founded in 1976 as a poetry publishing house. And the sort of origin story of BOA goes that our founder's name was Al Poulin. He was a professor at SUNY Brockport. He was also a poet and a translator. And he, at that time, was running the Writers Forum at SUNY Brockport. And as they were bringing in authors, it became clear that there was limited routes for poets to get published outside of the New York corporate structure. And this, again, this is the mid 1970s.
When BOA Edition started 50 years ago, there was a different sort of drive and purpose behind it. Having nonprofit presses, having independent presses with the crazy rise of like the big literary publishing houses.
There wasn't small presses like there were today. There was a handful, but not like we have today or like has been around for the past 50 years. And so Al Poulin thought to himself, maybe I can publish books of poetry, and this is what he loved, more than anything was
This
poetry.
is Brockport Writers Forum.
Good morning. We're very pleased to have with us today Derek Walcott.
Our guest today is John Barth.
Our guest today, Rita Dove.
Welcome Grace Paley to Brockport.
The writing of Isaac Bashevis Singer. The poetry of Robert Hayden.
Our very special guest today, Lucille Clifton.
Nadine Gordimer. The poetry of Anne Saxton.
Today, the poetry of Seamus Heaney.
BOA was always really closely connected with the Writers Forum at Brockport. So early on, especially, you had, not just Al Poulin, but Anthony Piccioni and William Hand, and different authors who were integral to the founding of BOA and were perhaps BOA authors. And then we're also the ones bringing in those poets and conducting the interviews.
58 years ago, the college was in a phase of growing and hiring, and money was coming in from the state. And they started a creative writing program, and somebody said, we ought to have visiting writers coming through. Somebody dreamed it up, and somebody decided we should bring not one or two, but 5 writers every semester.
The Writers Forum started in the spring of 1968, and there were readings. It seemed there were readings almost every Wednesday night. But when there was a reading, you knew you could just show up, and it would be this amazing writer there. Fitzgerald was bringing in poets and critics and fiction writers then. One thing that Fitzgerald believed in, and then later when Al Poulin took over the forum, that was in the 1970s then, one thing these guys believed in, which meant so much, was that they wanted to give you access to these writers. They wanted you to be able to talk to these writers and hang out with these writers. Folks would go out to one of the local bars. People would go to barbers, say, and just sit with these poets and talk to them, or sit near them and just listen to them speak and listen to them talk with Gregory Fitzgerald and William Hand.
So there was this kind of collection of poets and students of poetry in Brockport who were able to, because of their friendships, were able to bring prominent people here.
One of the authors he had come into contact with was W.D. Snodgrass. Snodgrass had published a collection called The Heart's Needle that came out in 1959, and that won the Pulitzer Prize, which is astonishing for a first book. And so here's a person with a huge reputation already coming out of the gate who is having trouble placing this book of poems that he had worked on called The Fear Bunker. So Al, which was very wise, thought, what a great book to launch my new poetry press, right? I'll have a Pulitzer Prize winning poet and a book that's already sort of generating this controversy. And at that point, the press was being run out of Al's house.
And this is all out of that little house at the time on Park Avenue in Brockport. Later on, it would move to Rochester. It would get an office then. But at the time, he was doing everything at his downstairs desk. And I want to say, Al had this remarkable vision. He was a terrifically generous person. And so one of the things he did with BOA was not only to look to publish first books by young poets, but he also looked for those amazing writers at the time who didn't always have a steady press, just one after another. And he gave all of those poets homes. He gave Carolyn Kaiser a home for her book, and that book won a Pulitzer Prize. Right, Lucille Clifton's book won a National Book Award. Leon Lee's book won the Lamont Prize, which is now known actually as the James Laughlin Award. So Al certainly had a terrific eye and a terrific ear for poets, and wanted to be as inclusive as he could.
Eventually, I believe it was 1984, he published a book by Carolyn Kaiser called Yin. That book won the Pulitzer Prize itself. So now you have this little press that actually has won this incredibly prestigious award for one of their books of poetry, at that point only doing a few books a year, you know? And that, coupled with some more funding opportunities like through the NEA and through New York State Council on the Arts and so forth, allowed BOA to get more professional, let's say, and to actually like have staff members, to get office space outside of Al's house. At that point, the press moved to downtown Rochester, New York. And so set up shop there and, you know, had some actual employees who were paid. We have a great staff, a small staff that gets a ton done, with not a lot of hands on deck and not a big budget. But I think one of the reasons that BOA has been able to be around for 50 years and be successful and continue to win awards and be considered a prestigious place to publish your work is because we've stayed committed to that mission.
And that's, you know, that's one of the things that really drew me to BOA, is having such a tight knit 3-person team and the fact that everybody can manage to do everything. I feel empowered by it, and like seeing these successful people at work every day is so exciting.
And one thing that I say to new authors that I really mean is, you know, we're going to do your book and we're going to put a ton of time, energy, care into that book. We're also going to do 11 other books that year, and then we're going to do more books the next year and more books the next year. This is your book.
I think they pay attention to their artist. I've always felt like Peter is also a friend and not just an editor. I think, you know, people get involved in each other's lives to some extent, you know, so you know about what's going on at home. I think that's really important. So on one hand, it seems like it's a small press in that way, with the emphasis on small. On the other hand, it's not a small press in the sense of the impact that it's had on the poetry world over the past decades.
We're very collaborative with our authors. We, you know, work with them to get a cover that they like and that feels right for their collection. Our cover artist, Sandy Knight, she raids like every collection that she's designing for. And I don't think that that's something that's super common, to make it cohesive and meaningful. And, you know, we hear that from the authors towards the end of production, like, you know, especially authors who have been published elsewhere. They're like, you know, this is so amazing to be a part of my book.
BOA has such a great reputation that people almost sort of take for granted that we're here and that we're doing this work, and, you know, that the books are going to be of a certain quality. Yes, you know, BOA is established now, and that's wonderful, but it's almost a double-edged sword, because the truth is that we're a nonprofit organization that is always working on a shoestring budget. And so there's a danger of people just assuming that BOA will just always keep going. It really is not the case. You know, we have to caretake this thing. We have to fundraise for it. People who are interested in what we do and want to see it continue need to donate and support the cause. Because without those donations, without that support, nonprofits and even BOA editions can go away.
That's why I'm so thrilled to be joining at this time, because it's such a crucial time for nonprofits, and it's such a crucial time for art and real people making art. I think it kind of lines up with everything that we really need to be like facing right now, kind of on a national level. You see just how words have become sort of digitized, and how even just like the landscape of language is changing. And I think that this is a really, really crucial time to be supporting real writers.
And we see this all over, not just in New York, we see this all over the country. People begin presses, they have all these great intentions. They give themselves so fully to it, but they can't sustain it. They can't sustain it in terms maybe of time and energy. They can't sustain it financially. BOA somehow was able to do that. The right people at the right time, somebody who had so much vision and energy, and then passing it to other people with that kind of vision and energy.
I think that there's it's hard to kind of conceptualize how long 50 years is, especially in the life of like a nonprofit independent press. It is an insane achievement, really, to have, you know, made it this long. And the fact that, you know, we're facing so much in the nonprofit sphere right now that there's a little bit more of a push to make sure that we can keep going for another 50 years.
I think just from like inside the office, honestly, it's important just as a small, independent local business. Like, it's kind of incredible that an operation that has such a national reach is celebrating 50 years. Like, we're a very small team of just 3 people. Like, that is cause to celebrate for me.
When are they going to put a book on the news saying, over the weekend, this book sold 1,000 copies? The answer is never. They're never going to do that. So we have to talk about it. Doing the work I'm doing now with Writers Forum, I understand better. Sometimes you just have to like say, look, we're doing something really good, and a bunch of quiet people have loved it for many years. And you just have to kind of, hey, notice this excellent thing that's going on.
I can't imagine my own life in poetry, even my life outside of poetry. I can't imagine without those books that have just meant so much to me and have lodged themselves within me and given me my life, really. So I'm so grateful to BOA for those 50 years and onward.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really important to recognize BOA's 50th anniversary because it's a huge accomplishment to have a small artistic organization of any kind last for 15 years in this environment, which is not always that friendly to startups, to idealistic ventures, to people who are doing something that isn't just for pure profit, but they're doing it because they believe in what they're doing. You know, the reputation just continues to grow and grow for BOA editions in our books. So that's astonishing, you know, and it's a tribute to all our authors that we've published, to all the staff members that have worked at BOA over the past 50 years, our board of directors that has been, you know, different members over the past 50 years. We have a national advisory committee, and all the readers, you know, and people who've just valued the books. Like, they're all a part of the BOA family. They're all a part of the BOA story. Every one of them deserves a pat on the back for having this press be around for 50 years.